Think back to a summer when you were maybe 8 years old. Remember how long it felt? Endless mornings, endless afternoons, a single week stretched out like it might never end. Now, think about last summer. Where did it go? You blinked and it was gone. You didn't imagine this. It's not nostalgia playing tricks on you. Something measurable is actually happening inside your brain as you age. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll never experience a fast year the same way again. Let's start with the strangest part of this. Physically, nothing about time itself has changed. A year is still 365 days. A day is still 24 hours. The clock on your wall is not lying to you. What's changing is not time. It's you. Here's the first real clue, and it comes from a French philosopher named Paul Janet, who proposed something in the 1800s that sounds almost too simple to be true. He suggested that we don't experience time in absolute units. We experience it proportionally, as a fraction of the life we've already lived. Think about what that means mathematically. When you were 5 years old, one single year represented 20% of your entire existence. It was enormous. It was practically a fifth of everything you had ever known. But by the time you're 50, that same 12 months is only 2% of your life. Same 365 days, completely different weight. Your brain isn't measuring the year in isolation. It's measuring it against everything that came before it. And the pile of everything before it only gets bigger. This is sometimes called the proportional theory of time, and it explains a huge chunk of the effect. But it's not the whole story. Because if it were just simple math, an 80-year-old should experience time roughly 40 times faster than a 2-year-old. And while the acceleration is real, it doesn't track that cleanly. There's something else going on, and it lives in a completely different part of your brain. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. Neuroscientists studying memory have found that your brain doesn't actually record time the way a clock does. It records time through the density of new experiences. Picture your first week ever driving a car. Every second required intense focus, new sounds, new sensations. Your brain, forced to pay close attention to unfamiliar information, laid down memory after memory after memory in rapid succession. Now, picture your commute today, after years of driving the same route. Your brain barely bothers to record it at all. It's automatic, familiar, forgettable. Your mind essentially decides it isn't worth the storage space. This matters because when you look back afterward and try to judge how much time has passed, your brain doesn't check a stopwatch. It checks how many distinct memories it has to sort through. A period packed with dense, novel experiences gets stretched out in retrospect. It feels like it took forever because there's so much material to look back on. A period made of repetitive, familiar routine gets compressed down to almost nothing because there's barely anything there to remember. This is why childhood summers felt endless. Nearly everything was new. First bike ride, first best friend, first sunburn, first trip to the ocean. Your brain was recording constantly at a density it will likely never match again. And this is why adult years compress. Wake up, commute, work, dinner, sleep, repeat. 500 times in a row, nearly indistinguishable from each other. Your brain looks back on an entire year of that and essentially says, there's nothing here worth measuring. Compress it. Psychologists sometimes call this the holiday paradox, and it captures something almost cruel about how memory actually works. While you're on a genuinely novel vacation, new city, new food, new sights, time in the moment can feel like it's flying by because you're overstimulated and distracted. But when you look back on that same trip weeks later, it suddenly feels like it lasted far longer than it did because your brain packed it with so much distinct material. Meanwhile, an entire uneventful month back home, one you lived through in real time at a normal pace, shrinks down in memory to something that feels like it barely happened at all. There's a related phenomenon that researchers studying autobiographical memory keep running into, and it's called the reminiscence bump. When people of any age are asked to recall the most vivid, most emotionally significant memories of their entire lives, an overwhelming number of those memories cluster between roughly age 15 and 25. Not childhood, not old age. that one specific decade. Why there? Because for most people, that period is stuffed with genuine firsts. First real relationship, first time living away from family, first job, first heartbreak, and the first real recovery from one. Your identity is still being built during those years, which means your brain treats almost everything happening to you as significant enough to encode in detail. After that window closes, for a lot of people, the pace of novel, identity-shaping experiences drops off a cliff, replaced by variations on a career, a routine, a familiar set of relationships. The reminiscence bump isn't proof that your 20s were objectively the best years of your life. It's proof that they were the most densely recorded ones. Put the proportional theory and the density theory together, and you get the full picture. Every year is genuinely a smaller fraction of your total life than the one before it, which stretches your frame of reference. And at the same time, most adult years are, on a moment-to-moment basis, less novel than the years that came before, which shrinks the actual memory record you have to look back on. Two separate mechanisms, quietly working together, both pointing in exactly the same direction, toward a life that feels like it's accelerating, even though the calendar hasn't sped up by a single second. There's also a physiological piece to this. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter tied closely to novelty and reward, appears to play a direct role in how densely your brain encodes an experience. Novel situations trigger a small dopamine spike, sharpening attention and strengthening memory formation in the moment. As we age, baseline dopamine activity gradually declines, so the same event that felt vivid and electric at 20 might simply register as pleasant, forgettable background noise at 40. You're not just seeking less novelty as an adult. Your brain may be chemically less primed to fully register it. So here's the uncomfortable reframe. It's not that time is speeding up. It's that your life, especially in adulthood, is quietly getting more repetitive. Routine is efficient. Routine is comfortable. Routine is also, neurologically speaking, a kind of erasure. Every day that looks exactly like the day before, it gets compressed down to almost nothing in your memory, and the years start to blur together into a gray, undifferentiated mass. There's an evolutionary logic buried underneath all of this, too. A brain that recorded every single repetitive moment in exhaustive detail would waste enormous resources storing information with no survival value. Novelty, on the other hand, often meant something worth remembering. A new threat, a new resource, a new route through unfamiliar territory. Your memory system evolved to prioritize the unfamiliar and discard the routine, because in the environment your ancestors lived in, that was the efficient trade-off. It just happens to come with a strange side effect once you're living in a world built almost entirely out of repeatable routine. So what actually slows this down? Researchers studying memory and time perception keep landing on the same answer, and it's almost frustratingly simple. Novelty. New places, new skills, new routes to work, new conversations with people you don't already know everything about. Every genuinely new experience forces your brain back into that dense, detailed recording mode it used constantly when you were young. And every one of those experiences becomes another landmark your memory can use to measure the length of a year. You cannot stop the calendar, but you can stop your brain from quietly compressing your life into a blur of identical days. The years don't actually get shorter. You just stop giving your memory enough new material to prove otherwise.